I thought that was like a giant tail of a creature. What is it? Oh my god! Help me, please!
It's no secret the player in Subnautica turns quite a lot. From collecting resources to navigating a base and even scanning the ocean for threats, the ability to pan the camera and look around is one of the most important in the entire game. But what if for some reason you couldn't do it? Is it possible to beat the entirety of Subnautica without ever turning the camera? That's exactly what I wanted to find out. So I started up a new save, watched through the opening cutscene, and shall we say, didn't get very far. Yeah, so it turns out I have no way of bending over to pick up that fire extinguisher, meaning I can't really progress. Luckily, you can actually skip this whole intro sequence by just holding down escape at the beginning of the game, so in what technically became attempt number 2, that's exactly what I did. With the fire no more, I climbed up the ladder, hopped into the water, and started to explore. But while I'm doing that, I should probably take a second to explain what exactly I mean by not turning the camera, as well as what is and isn't actually allowed, because this run was originally supposed to be a bit different. After my last challenge video, a few of you suggested that I should try and beat the game without moving the camera, which I took to mean never changing the starting camera angle for any reason ever. Unfortunately, this just isn't really possible. There's too many things you need to interact with, like terminals, doors, and ladders, that'll forcibly change your perspective, making this run technically dead before you even get a chance to leave the life pod. In spite of this, I still thought the idea was really cool, so I decided to change up the rules a bit. Instead of trying to beat the game without the camera ever moving, what if we instead banned ourselves, the player, from ever physically turning it? How will I determine what counts as physically turning? Well, I settled on the very scientific approach of putting a piece of tape on the bottom of my mouse. If something's blocked by that, like looking up or down or spinning in a circle, it's completely off limits. But if you click on it, in my mind, that's the game forcing you to look in another direction, and therefore not a violation of the rules, which should hopefully make certain parts of this run at least theoretically possible. Getting back to the actual game now, I wandered around for a bit, grabbed a couple acid mushrooms, and broke some limestone in order to get copper for a battery. Then I headed back to the life pod to do some crafting. This was the first proper obstacle I encountered. The fabricator is all the way over on the left wall here, and from where I'm facing, I just barely can't reach it. This is pretty bad, because I need a fabricator in order to do, well, just about anything. Originally, my plan was to go outside, reorient myself with one of the life pod ladders, and die, since the game saves your camera position and one item you didn't already have upon death. But that would be a real pain to do every time I wanted to craft something, especially since I'd probably have to die multiple times just to craft a single item, so you can imagine I was quite happy to find a workaround. I realized that if you go up the ladders and then climb down the top hatch, getting off the ladder will skew your camera ever so slightly to the left. I have literally no idea why this happens, but it gave me just enough of an angle to click on the fabricator, so while certainly confused, I wasn't exactly complaining. With the basic crafting now sorted, I made a scanner and an O2 tank and headed back out. I kept exploring and got a few more resources, but I soon ran into another issue, and that was getting blueprints. You can find some fragments for stuff just scattered on the seafloor, but outside of wrecks, most of the fragments you get are gonna be inside these little boxes, which is fine until you find yourself facing the wrong way and can't turn around to get whatever's inside. The first box I found was like this, but thankfully it was still pretty close to the life pod, so I was able to go back, realign myself, and get the fragment pretty easily. But I could already see that as I went further and further out, that scanning certain fragments was only going to get more difficult. Pushing that future problem aside, I wanted to get some fins and a few better resources, so I headed out to the kelp forest. And once the sun went down, I made it my mission to catch some fish, a task that had proven difficult earlier on in the day. No, come back, come back, come back, come back, come back, I need to feed myself. Even with the fish being less active though, I was still suffering from this unfortunate condition known as skill issue, meaning I could still really only catch bladderfish, which I went home and cooked for what was probably the first time ever. Once the morning came, I grabbed some copper and discovered that simply facing in the right direction for a fragment did not necessarily guarantee being able to get it. Oh, I got it a little bit, and I get it a little more. This is a great way of doing things. Almost one more. Haha! New blueprint. After finishing the scan with absolutely no hassle whatsoever, I wrapped up the blueprint for the grav trap, got my first beacon fragment, and started looking for some caves, which naturally meant that I could somehow no longer find them. However, in the midst of all my aimless wandering, I did manage to snag the second beacon fragment, which will definitely come in handy later on. Back at the life pod, I made myself a sea glide and tried using the map to find some caves for sandstone. Emphasis on tried. It did not go very well. The trip wasn't a total bust though, as I did manage to get a piece of quartz, which let me upgrade my O2 tank. Then I set back out and began a little something I like to call the cycle of disappointment. Step 1. Look for a cave. Step 2. Find a cave. Step 3. Realize there either isn't any sandstone or I'm just too dumb to actually find it. Step 4, leave feeling defeated and repeat step 1. Eventually, I just got fed up of looking for caves and decided to try my luck in the grassy plateaus. This went slightly better, netting me a few rocks, and I was even able to get a laser cutter fragment before heading back. For more progression, I figured the grassy plateaus were probably my best bet, so I took a moment to build a couple beacons and an air bladder and then headed back out. On my way, I found a box in the kelp forest with a mobile vehicle bay fragment. I couldn't get it from where I was at, but that's where those beacons come into play. By putting one down, I could use it to mark the fragment and then come back later when I was facing the right direction. Once at the plateaus, I got the blueprint for the sea moth and found myself a nice little area near the sparse reef with quite a bit of sandstone. On the way back, I marked a second mobile vehicle bay fragment, and after realigning myself at the life pod, I headed back to the first box to see if I could scan it. Since I have the memory of a small, slightly spoiled potato, I was of course still facing the wrong way. But unlike the rest of my life, this trip wasn't actually a complete waste of time, as I took the chance to get some creepvine which I turned into fiber mesh and used to make a rebreather. Then it was back off to the kelp forest where I found yet another mobile vehicle bay fragment. Kidding me? It's right there. I'm literally touching it. Okay, so I'm 0 for 3 on MVB boxes, can't find a good cave to save my life, and maybe the game hates me. Let's take a quick break and work on something else. I'm sure this challenge can't make something as trivial as base building more complicated, right? As it would turn out, yes. Yes, it can. Going into this whole thing, the plan was to make my base in a big straight line, which unlike this insult to architecture would actually be quite functional. The idea was that I could just walk left and right and have easy access to my fabricator, lockers, and other knickknacks. But actually building this in-game proved to be a bit more complicated. For one thing, when I tried to put a solar panel on the roof, I realized that since I have no way of looking down, I couldn't actually get at the right angle to build one, downgrading my base from a futuristic pipe dream to something more akin to an empty Pringles can. I also had to be careful not to accidentally softlock myself. How does that happen, you might ask? Well, since I'm entering the base through a hatch and can't exactly turn around to exit the way I came in, if I ever enter a base and don't have the stuff to build an exit hatch, I'll essentially be trapped forever, even respawning in the base once I eventually die. And that would not be very good. Luckily, I did bring the stuff to make a second hatch, so at least for now, getting stuck wouldn't be an issue. The bigger, much more pressing problem was that the design of the base itself was not the genius idea I thought it was. Since the walls of the eye compartments are so short, I couldn't use them to place down lockers, which without power were pretty much the only things I could actually even use. I was able to get down one locker at the end of an X compartment, which finally gave me a little storage, but this definitely wasn't going to cut it in the long run. Still, with at least some form of a base now established, I decided it was about time I got to work on that mobile vehicle bay. It took a bit of trial and error, but I was finally able to get back and scan one of the marked fragments. 1 down, 2 to go. Next up was the other marked fragment. At first, I thought this one was actually going to be a bust, since the opening on the box was facing away from the life pod hatch, which to this point was the one major direction I still couldn't look. But then I got an idea. By aligning myself perpendicular to the base, I could enter and exit the opposite way, allowing me to face the new direction. 1 long swim later, and I had the next fragment. Since I only needed 1 more, I decided to just stay and keep looking around in the area. But let's just say my luck wasn't the greatest. Ooh, box, yes! Please have what I'm looking for. No, what? Why are you a sea glide? Oh, come on. That's a ripoff. Come on. Please be an MVP. Please be an MVP. Oh no, I think that's a sea glide. It's a freaking... Why is there a sea glide at the edge of the grassy plateaus? Who is going to the grassy plateaus without a sea glide? Why? Also, where were these sea glide fragments when I needed a sea glide? I guarantee I'm gonna get this next MVP fragment, and all I'm gonna get from there is MVBs. Another sea glide! And radiation! You know, game, for once, you could give me something that I do want. That'd be really nice. Nope, just gonna keep giving me... okay. I guess I'll keep looking. After a long while, I managed to find 2 more boxes. I couldn't actually see what was inside, but I put a beacon down with the hope that at least one of them had what I was looking for. Turns out they both did, and while I couldn't get the first one, the other one looked completely doable from another angle. So after 1 more trip home to realign, the 3rd and final fragment was done. I was just gonna head back after this, but by pure chance I managed to stumble to Life Pod 3, getting an unexpected but welcome upgrade. Yes! Yes! Compass! I don't care about the PDA. Is there water down there? No. Oh, that's gonna be so useful. I can tell which of the 4 directions I'm facing. I went back home, made the compass, and started getting materials for what I thought would be one of the most useful items in the entire run, the mobile vehicle bay. Up to this point, I was pretty much limited to facing one of the 4 cardinal directions of the life pod. Literally any other direction, and I was out of luck. There's of course plenty of other ways I could change my position, doors, tablet terminals, that sort of stuff, but these have 2 pretty big problems. Most of them are really inconvenient to get to, and even if I do decide to use them, they'll each only ever point me in one very specific direction, and knowing my luck, it probably ain't a very good one. But that's where the mobile vehicle bay comes in. It, like many other interactable things, locks your camera whenever you go to use it, but unlike those other things, it can turn a full 360 degrees. Meaning with a bit of patience, I can push one around and basically use it to face whatever direction I want. So I crafted one up and felt all happy inside, but little did I know I was about to get something even better. Something that would completely change this run. The Seamoth was honestly something I hadn't planned to make. Like with the no movement run, I thought I'd just skip it and go straight to the prawn suit. But since I just so happened to get all 3 fragments and it really wasn't that expensive, I decided to give it a whirl. And that turned out to be a really good move. At first, I wasn't aware of what I now had. I spent ages lining up the MVB trying to get this thing to face perfectly north. Or south? I thought that Seamoth faced the other way when you built it. It's not important. Anyways, I did this because I thought facing one of the big 4 would make navigating a lot easier. And I was right, for about 30 seconds, until I backed into a rock and messed everything up. This was quite annoying, but there wasn't anything I could do about it, so I just sort of carried on with my life. But after bumping into a couple more things, I realized I could start doing this intentionally to rotate the sub, and by extension, myself. A few minutes later, I realized I could cut out the middleman entirely and just push the Seamoth to face whatever direction I wanted to go. This ended up being way better than even the MVP. It was a lot less finicky, I could use it at any depth, and way more convenient since you're almost always gonna have the Seamoth when you're out exploring. The Seamoth was, in a sense, the holy grail of this challenge, a convenient, precise way to rotate myself anytime and almost anywhere. That last part was particularly important, because while it and the MVP represented some good progress, the challenge was by no means over, and to actually get further, there were quite a few upgrades I still had to get. I realized I had to start somewhere, and so I set my sights on getting the laser cutter, battery charger, modification station, and propulsion cannon, items that would hopefully make getting the rest of the blueprints a lot easier. To find all these fragments, a wreck in the grassy plateau seemed like the way to go, and luckily there are 5 such wrecks to choose from. Of them, I figured the one to my northeast was probably the best bet, as it was both large and didn't require a laser cutter. So that's where I went. Oh, that's mod? Yes, mod station. Okay, coming here wasn't for nothing. Can I scan this before I die? Thank you. Thank you, game. Thank you, game. Oh, is that another one? I'm seeing orange and I'm getting my hopes up. Ooh, battery. Battery. Battery charger. See, I would have completely missed that had I not come in at a different angle. Where's the rest of this wreck? Oh, it's up. I gotta go up. I am a smart person. Ah, mod station. Nice. Two of 3. Getting this fragment even if it kills me. Yes, finally. It had taken a couple deaths, but I'd managed to get the blueprints for the battery charger, modification station, and laser cutter, which just left the propulsion cannon. I wanted to hang around and look for it, but while the spirit was willing, the flesh, aka my stomach, was very much weak, so I had to call it there for now. After getting home and getting my fair share of amino acids, I decided to head south. The grassy plateau wreck down here is a bit more unreliable, but since I only needed one more blueprint, I figured it was worth a shot. Unfortunately, my internal compass was not doing so hot. Rather than doubling back and admitting to my navigational failure, I decided to just mosey on over to the sparse reef wreck and pretend that was my plan this entire time. The wreck here admittedly wasn't super useful to me at this point, maybe because I didn't have a laser cutter and wasn't supposed to be here yet, but I was still able to get a few fragments and the data box for the vehicle upgrade console. After that, I headed to a nearby chasm to try and raid Life Pod 19. Ooh, gel sack, you're another thing I want. Come here. Thank you. Time capsule. I'm finding everything down here. And it has food in it. That's amazing. Yeah, I don't know who decided to leave 5 cured peepers in a time capsule, but in the moment I have to say it was much appreciated. A minute later, I found the life pod, and after a quick reorientation, I was able to get in and get the blueprint for the ultra-high capacity O2 tank. Normally, this is where I'd have called it quits, but with some extra food so graciously in my arsenal, I decided to try and explore one more wreck to my northwest. Since I hadn't yet been to the Aurora Mountains or Lost River, according to the warpers, I wasn't infected enough for them to attack me, meaning I could work on my next task in relative safety, and that was getting some Cyclops fragments. This time around, the wreck ended up being pretty kind, and I was able to get all 3 bridge along with 2 of the 3 hull fragments. Sadly, despite bumping into another wreck in the grassy plateaus, I still wasn't any closer to getting the propulsion cannon, and not wanting to waste all of my peepers, I was forced to head home to get some food and regroup. A bite to eat and a new power cell later, I was back in business, and this time I set out to the east. All in all, I had 3 main reasons for doing this. 1, I was pretty sure I could get the 2 propulsion cannon fragments in the western part of the crash zone. 2, there is a nearby mushroom forest, which according to you guys is a really good place to get shale. And 3, if all else failed with the propulsion cannon, there were a couple more grassy plateau wrecks that I could go and check out. First up was the crash zone, and let's just say it paid off pretty quick. Yo. Are you what I think you are? You're what I think you are. Yeah. Hang on. Why was I ever bothering with the grassy plateaus when I could have just come to the crash zone? Then I found the second box, and after a sand shark almost gave me an unconsensual one-way ticket back home, I finished off the blueprint. So I moved on to the mushroom forest, which also started out quite well. I then spent the next little bit mining up some shale, lithium, and grabbing a couple plants for later on. Then I went back home, started up the sunbeam countdown, and crafted a propulsion cannon and laser cutter. With a bit under 40 minutes until all the sunbeam stuff, I still had some time to kill, so I decided to head south to the floating island. I had my eye on a couple of different things here, but the main thing I wanted was the blueprint for the multi-purpose room. Not only would one of these give me ample space for some more lockers, but since the roof was sloped, it meant I could actually get down a few solar panels. The actual trek to the base was a bit tricky, since I couldn't rely on my Seamoth to change direction, but after skirting around the edge of the island for a bit, I did eventually make it. Oh, yes! Yes! It's here! And yeah, multi-purpose room. Just give me 3 years to scan it and we're good. Ow. Y'all are rude. Oh, wait, there's a grow bed sticking out of the ground here, right? Yes! Yes, I can get the grow bed. Oh, that's huge. I thought I was going to have to go to one of the wrecks in the bulb zone. That's going to save me so much time. On the way back, I decided to revisit the sparse reef wreck and put that laser cutter to good use. It was a bit tricky trying to cut through this door on the ceiling, but I got the blueprint for the reinforced dive suit, so I'd say it was worth it. Once I got back, I still had a few minutes, so I fiddled around with the multi-purpose room before spinning around my Seamoth and heading for the landing site. When I got there, I tried to watch the sunbeam explode. I don't really know what I was expecting to be able to see, but with my singular hope of rescue now condemned to a watery grave, I began looking for a way inside the giant gun. Normally, you'd probably just grab this tablet that's like 20 feet from the entrance, but I already knew that wasn't gonna happen, so I instead turned my attention to the caves beneath the island. Since I was swimming, if I could find a tablet down there, I figured I could probably get close enough to the ground to pick it up. The first cave was nothing but walls and water, but after a bit more searching, the second one actually had what I was looking for. At this point, a sensible person would have turned around, headed back to the surface, and gone into the gun like they said they were going to. I am not a sensible person, and for some reason, I got greedy and decided to explore a big wreck that I knew was somewhere in this general area. What could possibly go wrong? There is a wreck around here somewhere that I want to try and find. Although, to be honest, I have absolutely no idea if I can even reach it. It might be too deep. Might just actually be too deep. Oh! Oh! Oh no! Oh no! No 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 no. Okay, okay, you know what? You know what? We're not going to that wreck. We're gonna go up, we're gonna go to the surface, we're gonna get as far away from here as we can, and we're gonna not be here. Not be here. That sounds good. Okay. Yeah, bye. Goodbye. Goodbye. On a completely unrelated note, I decided I should go back and explore the gun. So that's what I did. After using the terminal to open up the door, I was stuck facing to the right, so I kinda had to feel my way around. Pretty soon, I found my first ion cube, which I was able to grab by standing behind the pedestal and jumping, since the player bends his knees ever so slightly upon landing. All in all, I came away with 3 cubes, and after grabbing this purple tablet, I opened up one more door to the main control room, a decision that I definitely wouldn't come to regret later on. Once I got back out, I made a half-hearted attempt to try and explore some caves, but I ended up abandoning the idea because I couldn't find my way around, and I probably would have died to a cave crawler long before I made it out with anything useful. Instead, I mined some shale near the base of the mountain, as well as the nearby underwater islands. Oh jeez. Oh my goodness, don't do that to me. While there, I also swung by yet another wreck, getting the last Cyclops fragments and 5 data boxes for my trouble. Once I got back, I decided it was about time I worked on the base. I built a big row of lockers, moved the main entrance to be a bit closer, and added in some crafting stations. But this used up the last of my copper and silver, so it was time to head back out on another resource run. My first stop was back in the underwater islands, causing me to spend the next 10 or so minutes getting violated by a bunch of bone sharks. And after probably wasting a third of my monthly electric bill on repair tool batteries, I decided I'd had enough of this godforsaken, bone shark-ridden, gravity-defying nightmare land, so I decided to take a break and swing by the edge of the blood kelp to load up on blood oil and deep shrooms. After one more small trip, I kept working on the base, adding in a moon pool and a vehicle upgrade console, which allowed me to make the first Seamoth depth module. The last thing I wanted to add was a modification station, but this was going to be a bit more difficult, since unlike the lockers, fabricator, battery charger, and everything else I'd built up to this point, the modification station can only be built on the ground, a place that to this point has been quite difficult for me to access. But I had a plan. I started off by building a multi-purpose room, not directly connected to the rest of the base, but on the same grid system so it would still have power. After making sure I had a way in and out, I fired an item at it with the propulsion cannon, which caused it to start flooding. This was crucial because once the water gets high enough, the player will enter a swim mode. Like in the mountain caves, this lets you get a lot closer to the ground, although still not quite enough to actually build anything. But there's a reason I'm doing this in a multi-purpose room. It sits ever so slightly lower than the regular corridors, meaning there's this little bit where the floor bumps up. And it turns out that if you're swimming and get yourself as close to the ground as you can, that slight bump is just enough for you to be able to build on. And with it, I was able to upgrade both my fins and O2 tank. Now that the base was pretty much done, I turned my attention to a new task, the Aurora. By now, the radiation was covering a good third of the map, which was a problem for me because I wanted to ditch the radiation suit for a reinforced dive suit. I had to go over there at some point anyway, and figured now was as good of a time as any, so I made up some gear and headed for the crash zone. Like with the no movement run, the Aurora has to be handled a little bit differently to how you'd normally do it, but at least this time it shouldn't take me 5 hours. Once I got in, the first thing I noticed is that you can't really put out some of the fires, but that's okay because I brought a couple first aid kits, and as long as you have enough health, you can just run straight through them. After that, I headed left for a bit and ran into a door. I couldn't cut it from where I was at, so I backtracked until I found an air pocket and used the mobile vehicle bay to rotate myself. Once I got through the door, I made my way up the black box room, felt my way through this underwater pipe section, and emerged in the prawn bay. The first order of business was getting the blueprint for the Neptune escape rocket, since that was the one thing I absolutely 100% had to have. So after another rotation, I climbed up the stairs and headed for the captain's quarters, where I was met with a keypad and a locked door. Now, the code itself isn't an issue, it never changes from run to run, but actually entering it is. You see, the code is 2679. By standing directly against the wall, I can easily hit the 7 and 9, but the 2 and 6 are a different story. Jumping and pressing the buttons on the way down never seemed to work, so I had to find another way. Luckily, the solution turned out to be a good 2 feet to my left. By using a prop cannon on this swivel chair and placing it like so, I was able to turn it into a bit of a makeshift ramp, which, after a bit of fiddling, gave me access to the first 2 buttons. After then being very careful to not screw up the ending, I opened the door, headed straight for the terminal, and got the blueprint. Next up was the blueprint for the prawn suit, so I headed back to the prawn bay. The first 3 fragments were all pretty easy to scan, and while at first I thought I'd have to leave and get the last fragment somewhere else, I realized I could rotate myself, shimmy up this beam, and that gave me just enough height to get the 4th fragment. Last but certainly not least was patching up the drive core. This caused me more problems than I'd like to admit, but with just 8 health to my name, I managed to kill all the bleeders, avoiding what would have otherwise been a very inconvenient death, and I fixed all the leaks without further issue. What followed was a very harrowing escape from the Aurora, during which I was constantly on the verge of dying in starvation, since these stupid supply crates refused to give me anything other than batteries and water, and being a professional YouTuber with over 68,000 subscribers, which by the way, you should totally subscribe, it'd be very cool. It should come as no surprise that I managed to get absolutely none of this on video. I'll let you imagine the sort of stuff I said when I found out I wasn't recording. Angry rants aside, I did eventually make it, and after getting greedy for a few more resources, I made it back home. The next trip was, comparatively, a bit all over the place. I popped down to the Jelly Shroom Caves to get some magnetite, then grabbed some more rubies and gel sacks from the Sparse Reef, and swung by the Blood Kelp Trench to pick up some more blood oil, since I apparently couldn't be bothered to wait for it to grow. What this trip also did was allow some time for all that radiation around the Aurora to disperse, so once I got back I was finally able to make the reinforced dive suit. At this point I had most of the mid-game items covered, which meant it was time to start thinking about the eventual trek through the Lost River and Lava Zone. To the surprise of absolutely no one, the prawn suit was my preferred vehicle of choice. The problem is, without any upgrades, it's pretty bad. So I decided to go on one final expedition to get the prawn suit drill and grapple arms. Now normally, my go-to in this situation would be to visit this wreck in the Grand Reef. It's reasonably close, safe, and you can get both of the arm fragments pretty reliably. But this time, I decided not to go there. Why? Well, I realized I'd basically been going to the exact same wrecks in the exact same order as my last, 3 playthroughs, and I honestly just kind of wanted a change in scenery. So where would I get this change in scenery? Well, there admittedly aren't a whole lot of wrecks that can spawn both grapple and drill arm fragments, but there was a place I had in mind. I knew of a wreck to my northeast that was big and would hopefully have a lot of fragments. Now it is in the dunes, which is probably a good part of why I've never really been here, but I wasn't actually all that worried. I'd been here in creative for another video, and the whole time I was there, I didn't see a single Reaper. So ever since then, I've sort of had this place in the back of my mind as a decent, reasonably safe wreck that I should check out. And today, I was gonna do just that. Or at least try to. I had to actually find the wreck first. Okay, where's the mushroom forest? Where's safety? Where's safety? I don't know whether it's worth it. That's why I'm worried. What? Okay, I thought I was just in the mushroom forest. Where's the mushroom forest? There should just be a slope with a bunch of debris. I am definitely getting closer to a Reaper. Where'd the mushroom forest go? Oh, no! No, Warper. No, Warper. Please. Please don't do this to me, man. No. 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 How long are you gonna follow me for? Hey, don't you get something better to do? Go bother someone else. Should just be a very steep slope with a ton of debris. And for some reason, it's not here. That looks vaguely wreck-shaped. That might be it. Yeah. You know, huge field of debris. Oh, it's because when you go 5 feet away, it all disappears. Well, yeah, no wonder I didn't find it. Well, that took longer than expected, but no matter. Time to go in, get those fragments, and get out. Okay. Got one drill fragment. I can probably get away with just the drill fragments, but I would like to get both. Okay. There's a couple drill fragments. Ah, jeez. Warpers. Now's really not the time, guys. Oh, great heavens! Please, please, don't. No. Oh, that's a Reaper just chilling in the mountain. Yeah, no, they do that all the time. I'm sure there's absolutely nothing wrong that will come with that. Just keep my head down and keep scanning. The $1,000,000 question is, can I get grappling arm fragments while I'm here? Or is this just one big field? It's looking like just one big field of drill arms. Oh my. How many drill arms are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I know I'm supposed to be scared because it's the dunes, but my curiosity is getting the better of me. 6, 7. What is this? Oh, where is he? Why are you here? You're not supposed to be here. No. What? I've been lied to. Buddy. Since when are you over here? Hello? So it turns out, past me was an idiot, and Reapers are apparently more than capable of making their way over here. Also, despite finding the game's entire supply of drill arms, I didn't get a single grapple arm fragment. There might have been some more on the inside, but I was not about to go back and check. What that meant, though, is that I had to find another wreck, and after spending more than 15 minutes being slightly out of my comfort zone, I was more than willing to just throw in the towel and visit the wreck I always do. Except now, even that one wasn't willing to cooperate, and after combing through the entire thing, I was still missing a fragment. At this point, it was starting to dawn on me that maybe spending 40 plus minutes on an item designed to give me a few minor speed boosts wasn't the best use of my time, but the sunk cost fallacy had fully kicked in, so I had to try and find yet another wreck. Once I did reach the wreck, I apparently figured out where all the grapple arms were hiding, before turning around and heading home. With that, I had pretty much all of the blueprints I could ever possibly need, so after one more bit of resource collection, I built the prawn suit and began gearing up for the lava zone. A few minutes later, and I had everything I needed. Extra storage for the prawn, ingredients for the Mark II and Mark III depth modules, even all the stuff to build a powered vehicle upgrade console so I could really try and limit my trips to the surface. All that was left to do was make 2 purple tablets for the alien thermal plant, and I'd be good to go. What? Hello? I know I picked him up. Huh? So, remember when I picked up those purple tablets earlier and, didn't scan them? Well, apparently that was a really dumb thing to do. I thought I'd still get the blueprint from picking them up, since that's how the blue and orange tablets work, and you'd think all the tablets would work the same, but apparently the purple ones just don't do that, and I somehow never noticed. Also, since earlier on I'd made the brilliant decision to use my last tablet to open up this door, I didn't have another one to scan. After coming to the realization that I might have softlocked myself a dozen hours into this thing, I tried to figure out what to do. Don't get me wrong, there are still several tablets I knew about, including this fragment, which in hindsight is probably the game's failsafe for people doing what I did, but all of these were on land, and I was not going to be able to pick them up. However, there was one small glimmer of hope. I'd gotten my first tablet in the caves under the mountain island, and I figured there might still be 1 or 2 of them down there. So, with no other real options, that's where I went. Okay, I've got it. I can drop it, right? Yes, I can drop it. Okay. I just need to find a slope now. Somewhere I can drop it, and then I should be able to scan it. Here should work. Here should work. Okay. Yes! And there we go. After getting back home and making what was now only one more tablet, I cured some food, packed everything up, hopped in my prawn, and set out for the lava zone. This was my very first time using the prawn in this run, and believe me, there's a very good reason why. Because as nice as the maxed out crush depth is, using it was about to make my life a lot more difficult. With the sea moth, I'd been able to sort of skirt around the more painful parts of this challenge by bumping into it to change its and subsequently my rotation. But the prawn suit is different. It doesn't move when you push it, and the only ways I can really get it to turn are by docking it in a moon pool, going through a portal, or getting grabbed by something. All of which range from impractical to downright stupid. What that means is anytime I'm using the prawn suit, I am fully committed to facing one direction. And it just so happened that I was going to be using the prawn suit for quite some time. Despite this, I had a plan that I thought would make the trip to the lava zone a bit less painful, and it all started with me heading backwards? Since I was starting roughly in the center of the map, my destination, the primary containment facility, was also in the center of the map, and all 4 of the entrances to the Lost River were near the edge of the map, I reasoned that, without being able to turn, I was going to have to do about half of this trip backwards. Now, I don't know about you, but having to go backwards past a bunch of ghosts and sea dragons really didn't sound like a fun way to spend the next couple hours. So I figured if I faced north and used one of the southern Lost River entrances, I'd essentially be able to front-load the whole going backwards part where the terrain and enemies were a bit easier. And I soon became very glad that I decided to do this, because there were 2 problems I ran into almost immediately. First of all, the prawn suit is clearly not designed for moving backwards, and combined with bumping into what felt like every rock and cliff face in the whole dang ocean, it was slow going at best. It also seemed something about what I was doing was really messing with the prawn's energy consumption, and before I'd even left the grassy plateaus, I was already burning through power at a mildly concerning rate. And while not directly the prawn suit's fault, there was still just the issue of me getting lost. I realized I probably should have put a beacon at the Lost River entrance, and I even almost backed into the dunes at one point, but I did eventually arrive at the Blood Kelp Trench. From here, it seemed like my plan was starting to pay off. I went from heading backwards to sideways, and by the time I hit the Lost River, I was mostly going at it head on. However, I definitely overestimated just how far north this place actually goes, and it wasn't long before I was just staring at the left wall. I did get some great use out of the grappling arm, though. I mean, come on, just look at that efficiency. Anyway, once I found a good spot, I picked up 4 crystalline sulfur and mined up some nickel for the next depth module, which I promptly made. Then it was a quick trek through everyone's favorite biome, down another drop, and wait a minute. Why am I going backwards again? Okay, everyone, it turns out that whole facing north plan, it doesn't really work when you forget to account for an entire freaking biome. So yeah, that wasn't a whole lot of fun. It also nearly cost me a fair bit of time, as I somehow got stuck in the one random crevice in the entire area, only to then realize I hadn't actually saved since leaving the surface. All I'm saying is thank goodness I was able to get out, because I was not trying to do this whole trip all over again. After what felt like a half hour of just feeling around, I did manage to make it to the main chamber, and into the alien thermal plant. I mined up some ion cubes, picked up the blue tablet, which, would you look at that, actually gave me the blueprint, and I was able to snag the blueprint for the ion power cells by just jumping off a ledge. Then I activated the teleporter and made a brief trip home to craft the last depth module, a second blue tablet, and grab a couple more power cells. Then I headed back, exited the thermal plant, and began the trek to the lava zone. Or at least that's what I would have done if I didn't have to first get back out of the lava castle. Let me tell ya, You think finding your way through here normally is bad? Try going at it blind in a vehicle that is clearly not designed for going backward. I mean, I was going at it for like a solid 10 minutes, I round a corner and I could still see the friggin' power plant. A few more minutes go by, I finally find the one tunnel I'd been passing over the whole time, and it literally felt like something of a small miracle when I finally did make it out. Now I have to keep going right, because Oh, he's behind me! He's behind me! He's behind me! Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord, he is not happy with me. Just gotta find a hole that goes into the ground so that I can get out of here. Oh! No, 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 no. You know, you wanna fight, buddy? Ow! Oh! 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 No! 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 No, 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 no. I changed my mind. I changed my mind. I don't want to fight you. 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 Grapple arm. Come on, do your job. Do your job. You have one job. Get me out of here. Woo! That buddy took half of my health with one little stabby stab. I got a reinforced dive suit on. He done nearly killed me. Holy! Unfortunately, it wasn't like things got much better after that. And heading into the lava zone, I was somehow going backwards yet again. I legitimately don't know if I could have planned this out worse if I tried. Luckily, the sea dragon wasn't really doing his job today, so I was able to get through the last bit mostly unimpeded, and I arrived at the primary containment facility. I went in, yapped with the Sea Emperor for a bit, and snagged a Sea Crown seed before activating the portal and heading up to the surface. I went home to make the enzymes, and decided to take my Seamoth back to save a little time. One portal ride and incubator insertion later, the babies were hatched and I was cured. I went back up to turn off the gun, and all that was left now was one final rocket resource grind. Normally, I'd just go mine everything in about 5 minutes with the prawn suit, but it had honestly been so much of a pain to use, I decided to just take all the upgrades and ditch it at the portal. Luckily, the Sea Treader's path is very Seamoth friendly, and after grabbing a bit more copper on the way back, shout out to reefback barnacles by the way, they're legitimately the most underrated source of copper, I had basically everything I needed. At least, that was until I realized I never actually got the blueprint for the Cyclops shield generator. It should have just been an easy pickup in the old Sea Treader's path wreck, but of course I had to overcomplicate things by forgetting the one tool I actually needed, so I ended up having to go all the way out to the Deep Grand Reef to get it. But now that I had it, there was just one more thing to do, and that was actually crafting the shield generator. On the surface, this doesn't seem like it would be all that complicated, and well, you're kind of right. I was able to go out, build the Cyclops, get in, and make the shield generator with absolutely no issue. The problem was getting back out. While making my way in was simple enough, both of the exit hatches are built into the floor, which, as I've mentioned ad nauseum, is not somewhere I can really get at. Dying also won't work either, since the game considers the Cyclops a base, you'll always just respawn in the bottom locker room. As far as I can tell, the only real way to get out of here is by dying when the Cyclops explodes, since for fairly obvious reasons, this doesn't make for a great respawn point. But that presents another problem, because the Cyclops doesn't typically just explode for no reason. So how do we get this thing to stop existing? Well, by far the easiest way is to get behind the wheel and give this thing the old Freebird Jack Daniels treatment, but to do that, we have to turn on the engine, which is all but impossible when you can't look left to hit the start button. Or at least, that's what I thought. One day, I was messing around in a test world and noticed something kind of odd. Did you see it? Let's go back a bit. Yeah, that shouldn't be there. So it turns out, the Cyclops buttons don't actually go away whenever you leave the helm. They're still there, just invisible. And if you know where they're supposed to be and line yourself up just right, you can actually turn on the engine from anywhere in the sub. Using this trick, I was able to get underway, and after crashing into my fair share of rocks and aquatic life forms, the sub blew up, and I was back in the life pod with 17 court orders, a DUI, and a fancy new Cyclops shield generator. After that, I carted everything over to the mountain island and began construction. Like with the no movement run, not being able to turn kinda creates some issues when it comes to activating all the terminals and actually launching the rocket. But luckily, for the second time in a row now, building the rocket underwater fixes literally all of these problems. For the 3 switches down below, I was able to rotate with the Seamoth and drop down from above in order to activate them. For the cockpit, I powered up the prawn suit and dropped it down into the fuel reserve. Then I finished building the rocket, went inside, and entered and exited the prawn suit. This tricked the game into thinking I was underwater, which allowed me to get low enough to hit the last 3 terminals. And with that, I left a very helpful time capsule, sat down in the chair, and finished off the run. All in all, this wasn't the longest challenge I've ever done, nor the most difficult, but that doesn't mean I didn't have a bunch of fun while doing it. And if you happen to enjoy watching it, consider leaving a like, letting me know what you'd like to see next, and maybe even subscribing. Also, I finally got around to making a Discord server. So if you're interested in talking to me and a bunch of other cool people, consider stopping by and checking it out. Anyways, that's all from me for now. Have a great day, and I hope to see you all again very soon.